We don't very often delve deep in. David hit the record button. Thank you, David. We don't very often delve deep into the Old Testament, right? Because we're working through the lectionary, and that's focused on the Gospels, and we want to hear the stories about Jesus. But hiding in plain sight in the Old Testament is some history about how we got to where we are. And that's what we're going to look at today. The history of what happened to the divine feminine. There was a time when we had goddesses as well as gods in our temples and our, gathering places. And these days you hear phrases like, the return of the divine feminine, or the rediscovery of the, it's like, where did she go? What happened? She used to be here? What's the deal? So it turns out there was a very specific time when the disappearance happened, and that's what we're going to look at this morning. So the term divine feminine refers to the energy of nurturing, of intuition, of creativity, of compassion that actually exists within everyone, but is associated more with kind of that right brain, female, intuitive sense. And it's symbolized in many cultures by goddesses and maternal archetypes. It represents life-giving forces like birth, renewal, receptivity, and it's in balance with the more masculine energies of logic, linear thinking, achievement. It's the balance that works. And somewhere, we kind of lost that. But to investigate, we're going back to the very beginnings of Judaism. So the Abraham-Isaac stories, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, began about 4,000 years ago, just so you got the time frame. And in those days, all the ancient Near Eastern cultures had multiple gods and goddesses. They had a pantheon, like the Greeks and Romans would in their day. So Egypt, Sumeria, Phoenicia, Acadia, they all had gods and goddesses with different names, but often the oldest set was headed by El, E-L, and Asherah. El was the patriarch of the gods, the creator god, and Asherah was his wife, and she was the goddess of fertility, abundance, fecundity, and wisdom. So the figure on the cover of your bulletin is what's called an Asherah, meaning this is a likeness of it's a maternal archetype. And this one was dug up in Israel about 1000 BC. These small ceramic figures that you can hold in your hand, they show up in archaeological digs all over the Eastern Mediterranean. And there's some more pictures here on Janus's altar. We've talked before about what happens when a new religion moves into an area that's already populated with people worshiping differently. There are two basic approaches to this problem. One is assimilation, and the other one is annihilation. Right? So an example of assimilation might be when Christianity moved north into the Celtic lands and merged with the nature-based religion that was there with the Druids and so forth. So the Roman cross acquired a circle in the middle, which is the sun. Important holidays merged. It's one of the reasons we have Christmas in December, close to the solstice. And names kind of merged. I mean, the Celts in Ireland had Breda. She was one of she became Bridget. They kind of made room for this new thing without losing what they already had. It was an evolution, and at least at the beginning, nobody got hurt. Okay, an example of annihilation might be Spain in the 15th century, when Ferdinand and Isabel ascended to the throne and determined that they were going to make Spain a Christian-only nation. Spain had had centuries of peaceful coexistence of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Under Moorish rule, I might add, of the three, Islam is by far the most tolerant of its two brother religions. But in 1492, Ferdinand and Isabella issued the Edict of Expulsion, which said that all Jews and Muslims had to either convert to Christianity or leave the country. That's it. Those are your two choices. Many left. And of those who stayed, there were many who sort of converted. That's right. Sort of. That's okay. Was that a comment on that? I thought maybe you were doing a musical. No, it's okay. So this sort of converting is they were publicly Christian. You know, they went to Mass on Sundays and they observed all the Christian behaviors, but quietly at home on Friday nights, they're still lighting Shabbat candles. They were called Marranos. And rooting them out was one of the goals of the Spanish Inquisition. In that situation, lots of people got hurt. The Inquisition was pretty bad. So those are our two, in big terms, options for what happens when two religions intersect in the same space. So let's go back to Old Testament times when Moses is leading the Israelites north out of Egypt, right? They stop at Mount Sinai, they get the 10 Commandments, they keep going, it takes them a long time, but finally Joshua leads them into the Promised Land, and what do they discover? The Promised Land is already occupied. Oh, rats. So they, have a few battles and beat a few kings and establish, we're here because our God said we should be here. Our God that you don't believe in, but never mind. So, the Canaanites who were already there and the Phoenicians and the rest of them moved over and made room for these new people. And then it came to, who are we going to worship? Because the Canaanites had a pantheon, most normal thing in the world. They worshipped in general either El and Asherah or Baal, the storm god, B-A-A-L, right, Baal. But always the balanced pair, Baal and Asherah. And here come the Israelites with one God. Not only one, but one that you don't know what they look like, because the 10 Commandments say, thou shalt make no graven images, and thou shalt have no other gods either. So forget this assimilation business. We have one God, and you don't know what they look like, but God, Hebrew is a gendered language, and somehow God ends up as a he. So we have one male deity, and we're supposed to let go of the pantheon. But the people, they were okay about worshiping Yahweh, but just don't make me give up what I'm comfortable with. So they brought the cult objects, the vessels that they used in Baal worship, and the little Asherahs, and the sacred pole that represented the tree of life, which was one of Asherah's cult objects. They brought those into the temple. So now, you could go to a temple and you could choose, or you could worship them all. It was okay. The people tried assimilation. Okay, and that worked for a little while. It worked until there was some kind of a hardship, a drought, a flood. Something terrible happened. And somebody somewhere actually read those stone tablets and went, the reason we're having all this trouble is that we got Baals and Asherahs in the temple. This is bad. Yahweh isn't going to help us if we've got all these other gods. So they get rid of the Baals and the Asherahs, and Yahweh rescues them. And for a while, they stick with Yahweh. And they go back and forth between this, once they're, how when you get well, you forget about what happened, the guy who's sick. So over hundreds of years, they got the balls and the Asherahs in the temple, or somebody comes along and gets rid of them, and now it's only Yahweh. And it works for a little while. Now we bring out the balls and the Asherahs back, because we really do want both of them. So the parts of the Bible, the stories I'm going to read you out of the Bible are the stories of this back and forth. It was so obvious that at one point Elijah even said, remember Elijah the prophet? Yeah, he's in there in a lot of stories. But he actually says in 1 Kings, how long will you go limping with two different opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him. It's like, make up your minds. The people did not answer him a word. They really were kind of stuck. And you'll see, I think, why as we look at a couple of these stories. So we start in 1 Kings. The kings, when the people ask God for, give us a king, and God's, this is with Samuel. Samuel was their main prophet. And then they said to Samuel, tell God we want a king. Samuel said, you don't want a king. We want a king. Samuel goes to God and says, they want a king. Tell them they don't want a king. Samuel goes back, you don't want a king. We do. Everybody else has one. That's literally the excuse they gave. All the other nations have a king. So finally, God relents and gives them a king. And of course, the reason that Samuel and God say you don't want one is that some kings are good, some kings are not so good. And the stories in the Old Testament are one after another. You're always cleaning up what somebody just did. It's so human. It just, nothing changes. Anyway, here we are. We've got the kings that started with Saul, and then David, and then Solomon, and now we've got the rest of the sons of David. So, 1 Kings 15, in the 20th year of, I have to explain one other thing. All the Israelites came north, but by this point they had kind of coalesced into two groups. There was Judah in the south that was around Jerusalem, and Israel in the north that was around Samaria and Mount Carmel. So they each had kings at this point. So there's a king of Israel and a king of Judah. In the 20th year of King Jeroboam of Israel, Asa began to reign over Judah. He reigned 41 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Maacah, daughter of Abishalom. Asa did what was right in the sight of the Lord. That's a little key phrase. Did what was right in the sight of the Lord, as his father David had done. So he's one of the many sons of David. He put away the illicit priests out of the land and removed all the idols that his ancestors had made. He also removed his mother, Maacah, from being queen mother because she had made an abominable image for Asherah. Asa cut down her image and burned it at the Wadi Kidron. The Wadi Kidron shows up a lot in these stories. A wadi is like a dry stream bed kind of thing, dry river valley. And the Wadi Kidron was east of Jerusalem, and it was like the sacred garbage dump. It's where you threw everything. You're going to burn it. Sometimes if you needed to kill people, you took them to the Wadi Kidron. You don't want to go there. Anyway, he burned it at the Wadi Kidron, but the high places were not taken away. Nevertheless, the heart of Asa was true to the Lord all his days. The high places refer to where the non-Israelite cultures built their altars. They didn't build churches, buildings, enclosed things like the temple. They built altars out in the open air, and they built them on high places so you could be up and look down. So when it talks about pulling down the high places, it means destroying the altars of the Baals and the Asherahs that are out in the countryside. So Asa tried to get back to just Yahweh. The Baals and the Asherahs are out. And then we move on to the next chapter. In the 38th year of King Asa of Judah, Ahab, son of Omri, begins to reign over Israel. This is in the north. Ahab, son of Omri, reigned over Israel and Samaria 22 years. Here's the other key phrase. Ahab, son of Omri, did evil in the sight of the Lord, more than all who were before him. And as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, he took as his wife Jezebel. Yeah, right. Daughter of King Ethbaal of the Sidonians, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. Because Jezebel was from the indigenous people, and she worshipped Baal and Asherah. So Ahab married out of his group, and now he's got a wife with these foreign gods. So he just goes right over there and worships Baal. He erected an altar for Baal in the house of Baal that he built in Samaria. Ahab also made a sacred pole for Asherah. Ahab did more to provoke the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, than had all the kings of Israel who were before him. It was bad. It was really bad. The prophet Elijah had to come rescue the people from Jezebel and the 450 priests of Baal. That's a great story, but we'd still be here at lunchtime if I told you all the good stories. Anyway, they essentially set up a duel, a my God is stronger than your God kind of thing. And Yahweh won hands down. So the people said, oh, okay then. And he took the 450 priests down to the Wadi Kidron and murdered all of them. Yeah, that's what they did. If you're on the losing side, I know. Old Testament is serious business here. Anyway, so we had to clean up after Jezebel. And then here we're into 2 Kings, and Manasseh, where's the accent go? Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 55 years in Jerusalem. So he's now down south of Judah. His mother's name was Hephzibah. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, following the abominable practices of the nations that the Lord drove out before the people of Israel. For he rebuilt the high places that his father Hezekiah had destroyed. He erected altars for Baal, made a sacred pole as King Ahab of Israel had done, worshipped all the host of heaven, and served them. He built altars in the house of the Lord, of which the Lord had said, in Jerusalem I will put my name. He built altars for all the host of heaven in the 2 courts of the house of the Lord. He made his son pass through fire. That was an interesting test in those days, fire walking. He practiced soothsaying and augury and dealt with mediums and with wizards. He did much evil in the sight of the Lord, provoking him to anger. The carved image of Asherah that he had made, he set in the house of the Lord. So he's bringing all this stuff, all these cult objects, back into the temple. But the crowning story comes during the reign of King Josiah. He reigned from 640 to 609. And the events I'm going to describe happened in 622. That's the year to remember. Josiah had given orders to the high priest Hilkiah to clean out all the monies that had been collected at the temple. And in doing so, Hilkiah discovers a book of the law and reads it to the king. Scholars guess it was probably a scroll of Deuteronomy, which is the book that records all the do's and don'ts, the 613 mitzvahs that you're supposed to observe as an observant Jew. And Josiah hears this thing and goes, we are so out of compliance. Oh. And he proceeds to get right with God. Here's what he did. So, right here comes the reading that Raina did. So the first thing he did was to get all the people together and read him this book and say, look look what we're not doing that we're supposed to be doing. And he made all the people swear they were going to follow the covenant. But that wasn't enough. He got very busy. The king commanded the high priest Hilkiah, the priests of the second order, and the guardians of the threshold to bring out of the temple of the Lord all the vessels made for Baal and Asherah and for all the host of heaven. He burned them outside Jerusalem in the fields of the Kidron and carried their ashes to Bethel. He deposed the idolatrous priests whom the kings of Judah had ordained to make offerings in the high places at the cities of Judah and around Jerusalem. Those also who made offerings to Baal, to the sun, the moon, the constellations, and all the host of heavens. He brought out the image of Asherah from the house of the Lord, outside Jerusalem, to the Wadi Kidron, burned it at the Wadi Kidron, beat it to dust, and threw the dust of it upon the graves of the common people. This guy's serious. He broke down the houses of the illicit priests who were in the house of the Lord, where the women did weaving for Asherah. He brought all the priests out of the towns of Judah and defiled the high places where the priests had made offerings, from Geba to Beersheba. He broke down the high places of the gates that were at the entrance of the gate of Joshua, the governor of the city. It just goes on and on. You not only read half of it. He's just going through the whole countryside, pulling down everything that smacks of non-Yahweh worship. These are known as the reforms of Josiah. He cleaned house. The last sentence of this big long paragraph is, the king defiled the high places that were east of Jerusalem to the south of the Mount of Destruction, which King Solomon of Israel has built for Astarte, the abomination of the Sidonians, for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, and for Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. So they're all just different gods worshipped by these different ancient Near Eastern groups. He broke the pillars into pieces, cut down the sacred poles, and covered the sites with human bones. I mean, it's just, it's just like cleaning house. This is the last time the Bible records a problem with the Baals and the Asherahs. They don't come back. Not into the temple anyway. So, and that happened in 622. So here's the thing. This is an example of annihilation, right? I mean, one religion's being like, we're going to just annihilate everything that reminds us, everything that was used in this other religion. But they couldn't control what people did at home. And I think in a bit like the Marranos in Spain, and this is my speculation, to see what you think about this. I'm imagining that, like the Canaanite women at home saying, okay, I can worship Asherah or Yahweh, but where's my Asherah? Where's Yahweh's wife? Where's a goddess who knows my condition? All I hear about is Yahweh, and he's male. I better hang on to my little Asherah just in case. I mean, can't you just imagine a Canaanite woman in the midst of all this turmoil going into labor? Okay, she's scared, the pain is intense, and they want her to pray to Yahweh. She doesn't even know what this dude looks like because there's no graven images. Far away, it's a man. What does he know of what she's going through? So she pulls out of the hiding place her little Asherah. That's what she holds on to get through this experience. I'll bet that Asherah worship continued at home, quietly, among the women, passed down from mother to daughter for a long time, because there wasn't a substitute for it. And I'm guessing that that's why so many of these little figurines keep showing up in the archaeological digs. They're not digging through the ruins of a temple, they're digging through ruins of people's houses. because that's where the Asherahs were. And meanwhile, the formal religion becomes increasingly male-dominated and out of balance. I'll just give you one more little story. When things get out of balance, I don't know, it's kind of like some of the stuff that's happening today. If you're going to put something down, you do it in as many ways as you can. And worship of Asherah was being suppressed in as many ways as they could. One way to notice that is how the practices of Asherah worship are presented in sacred texts and in their subsequent translations. It's kind of like an extremely slow version of social media where we measure the time in centuries instead of seconds. But the attempt is the same as you're planting disinformation, which is negative, it's kind of poisonous, it's a little nasty. And here, I'll give you this example. Where's my water? So one of the lines that I read in that long list of Josiah's reforms is chapter 23, verse 7. Josiah broke down the houses of the illicit priests who were in the house of the Lord, where the women did weaving for Asherah. So, the women were weaving something that got used. I don't know whether it was, decorations for the sacred poles, or maybe they dressed the Asherah figures like they do now, and, Black Madonnas have whole wardrobes that women sew. But the word that sticks out is illicit priests, because there were apparently men living in the temple environs who were part of the rituals in Asherah worship. The original Hebrew word in that spot is kedoshim, from kadosh. Kadosh means holy, sacred, consecrated, set apart. And kedoshim means people who are holy, sacred, consecrated, with the plural ending that is male, very specifically, because Hebrew is gendered. Kedoshim, so they are holy men, consecrated men. And here's the kicker. Nobody knows exactly what they did. Nobody wrote down what these rituals of Asherah were. So everybody's got a speculation, but nobody knows. So listen to the way that description has been translated over the years. They literally have made stuff up because they don't know. The 4th century Latin Vulgate, so this is St. Jerome's first time the Old Testament's been rendered in Latin, translates kedoshim as effeminatori, which means effeminate men. I don't know why they thought that was a good idea. The 17th century King James Bible translates kedoshim as sodomites. Come on, you just made that up. Later English translations used male temple prostitutes. Guys, you don't know that. The translations are carrying out the agenda of the translators. In the absence of actual information, we'll just make something up. Yeah. So 622 is the year that the Asherahs disappeared out of the temple. And if you've ever read, I brought a copy of it, Leonard Schlane's The Alphabet and the Goddess, fascinating book, because his thesis was that the rise of patriarchy and the rise of monotheism coincided, and that those two movements coincided with the use of an alphabet that was not image-based. Egyptian hieroglyphics, Chinese pictogram, the marks that you make to represent a word look like the word. I mean, the original Chinese pictogram for house looked like a little house. And images need both left and right brain interpretations. But an abstract alphabet, where it's marks on a page that you convert, the letters that you make words out of, and the letters don't have any image correlation to the words that you're making. Hebrew was the oldest of the alphabets that was completely abstract, which is a much more left brain activity because it doesn't have any image content. And all three of those things, the non-image alphabets, monotheism, and patriarchy, all came together in a lovely change of the world back in Old Testament times. People talk repeatedly about rediscovering the divine feminine, and it's the shift back to some kind of balance. I don't know whether the answer is adding goddesses back. I think maybe it's getting to a place where we talk about God without a gender, because the balance is the most important thing. So the song we're going to sing after talkback is an effort to recognize that when we talk about God, we mean many different facets, and the balance is really there if that's how you interpret God as well. Okay, here's our little Bible study for this morning. Who would like the podium? Come talk back.
It made me think of all the religions kind of coming together. It always reminds me, and I think it was very special at the time that I lived in Japan, from the age of 10 to 13. It was we were a military family, and the fort there had one chapel, and it was used for the Protestant, the Catholic, and the Jews. The cross on the altar, one side was plain for the Protestant, then you flipped it over and it had the crucifix on it for the Catholics, and then over in one corner of the room was a tabernacle for the Jewish service on Friday. And so when I came back to the States and was visiting my cousins, and they were like Southern Baptists, heavy duty, it was like their whole thing was, do you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? You had to make a testimony thing, and that was the whole spiel for them. But they couldn't, I really couldn't discuss having had the experience with these other religions, and that they supported each other. And they just